Welcome to The Pursuit, a podcast produced by the Junior Board of the Chicago Midwest Chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, otherwise known as NATAS. We're a group of emerging media professionals seeking insight from leaders in our fields. I'm Anthony Landahl. I'm a content producer with Nexstar Media in Chicago, and I'm also your host for this episode. Our guest today is an Emmy Award winner, the host for the WGN program Living Healthy Chicago, and also for Arizona Living and Creative Living. Jane Klaus is truly an individual who emits inspiration. I worked for her early in college, and I knew she could pass on some great advice. We recorded this podcast in late 2021, and even months later, I think her words and experience stands out as timeless inspiration for those getting started in their media career. So without further ado, I give you Jane Klaus.
The first question we always like to start off our podcast with is, when was the moment you knew you wanted to pursue your career, the career you have now?
I love this question. I love it. Jane Pauley was hosting the Today Show. I was 7 years old, and I would interview my dad on a cassette recorder, and there was another person named Jane interviewing people on TV. And I said, that's me, that's for me, that's my job. And then fast forward 5 years later, 7 years, I don't remember, but Katie Couric took over. And I was like, wait a minute, I was supposed to be the next Jane. Obviously, I was too young to be on the Today Show at that point. And I said, that's okay, it'll go Jane, Katie, Deborah, Jane. And I knew from that moment I wanted to be in broadcast media.
So those are all the people you looked up to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I look up to those people. I would listen to the way they would conduct interviews. I would listen to their crutch words. I would listen to the way they transition. Another person that I listen to a lot in her interview is Oprah. So I would say Oprah and Katie Couric are the two people that I have probably stolen some ideas on how to transition into different parts of an interview.
So you got the bug.
Yeah, I got the bug at a young age. I absolutely loved it. I didn't know that I could do it, but I knew that I wanted to do it.
Yeah. No, the Jane Pauley thing also kind of stuck with me a little bit, but not so much on the Jane part, just because of the interviewing skills. But so when you decided that's something you wanted to do, how did you go about pursuing that?
Well, I didn't go about it at all. So I went to college and I didn't study broadcasting because I was like, well, you can't do that. A little Greek girl from the south side of Chicago can't be on TV. So whatever, all these voices in my head saying I can't do it. So I actually didn't study broadcasting, but after school, I was working just a regular old job, trying to get into the mix. And I still wanted to be in broadcast. And at that point, I was really into music. And so I ended up getting into a radio station on the promotion side of things because I was really good at it. So that I majored in public relations. And public relations planning can also be producing planning, television planning, radio show planning. And what happened was I was able to use my skill set from my experience and sort of put that into being on the air. So I started off in radio in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. And so what was late 90s radio like? What was that landscape like?
You know what? People will say, wow, you just missed all the good stuff. All the good stuff happened in the 80s. Radio in the 90s was awesome because you had the grunge alterna rock. So it was just all about being the disruptors and how can we get your attention. And so it was like we missed all these crazy late night 80s drug-induced partying in the radio station studio stuff, which I don't know anything about. I just hear stories. But we also got to be very creative with what was happening in the world in the 90s. So super fun. I loved all the band part of it. At that point, I was just this kid, and that was what I was into. But so all along, working at the radio station, and I was doing this entertainment report on TV for a local station. So it all kind of went hand in hand. And I was honing my skills to be on camera while I was used to doing this entertainment entertainment report on the radio. So I really feel like that was my schooling, right? So I could plan it because that's what I learned, but then my schooling to be on the air, quote unquote, was doing both of those jobs.
How did you ultimately make that transition from radio to TV?
That wasn't my choice. We work for companies sometimes that say, so we're going to go a different direction, okay? So, so then you just have to figure out what you're doing next. You know, I love television. I absolutely love television. I've always loved television. When I was the alternative rock chick and people were saying, oh, television is so bad for you, I was the one that said, listen, I want to have a wall full of TVs and I'll watch everything, every piece of content. I want to learn about it. I want to see it. So I've always loved TV. So I think for me, the fact that a radio station said we're going to go a different direction, I was sort of like, yay, I could do more television. So it's sort of where my heart was, and that was a good thing for me.
Did you get that feeling like that you had when you were younger, that Jane Pauley, you're going to be the next Jane? Did that ever come back, or were you kind of past that point of passionate for television?
Oh, absolutely not. Now I want to be Rachel Ray or Martha Stewart. So coming from away from the news desk, I more so want to be a talk show host or inspire people in sort of a lifestyle, creative, you know, the living your best life sort of way. So no, that never goes away. I will tell you this though. I remember when I worked in radio and I really wanted to do more. I want to do more. And I said, if I could just be the girl that does the voiceover, like Funky Monkey 104.5 FM, Seattle's hot rock. Like if I could just do that, my dreams are fulfilled. And then I was like, if I could just have a show. And then it was, if I could just do this, if I could just do this, if I could just be on the Today Show, if I could just have my own program, if I could just win an Emmy. So that's life. Like your goals always get bigger and better. So no, the Jane Pauley thing has never gone away. One thing I love most about today is that Jane Pauley hosts CBS Sunday Morning. And my show, Living Healthy Chicago, airs so that's on Sunday. It airs like on my television screen. It's like Jane Pauley's thumbnail photo and then my thumbnail photo. So it airs right after she's on the air, and I'm like, Jane and Jane. So it kind of did work, right?
That's got to be a pinch myself moment, right?
So it's amazing. I when there's her picture for CBS Sunday Morning and then my picture, I'm like, I got to take a picture of my picture. This is so cool.
One thing that translates to everything you do, I feel like, is that gift of gab, that ability to talk, that not talk off our ear, but just hold a conversation, and even just doing this. Where did you think you got that? I'm
interested in you. I'm interested in other people. I want to know more about what you have to say. I'm tired of talking about me. I mean, we're talking about me right now because you're asking me to talk about me, but I would much rather ask the question, get the answer, and then ask another question. Sometimes I get a little tap on my thigh from my husband, like, stop talking. But I feel like everybody has such a great story and something to tell. And if you can dig that out of a person, that's what my goal is. That's what I want to do. And I want to make them feel comfortable enough to talk. So yeah, I could talk your ear off all day. Certainly got that from my mother. But my brother talks way more than me.
When you first kind of entered into radio, did you get right into it? Was it kind of like a seamless transition of trying to just talk with people, or was there a learning curve to talking on radio?
100% learning curve. I can remember interviewing bands back in the day. Jimmy Eat World comes to mind, and I was doing this for a radio and a TV interview, but we were backstage at some big concert, and I mean, I asked the dumbest questions. So yeah, it's a learning curve. I used to wake up in the morning and say, "What? Who said that you could do this? You can't do this. Why are you doing this?" And I would be getting up, at 2:45 or 2:30 to go do a morning show. You can't interview the governor of Georgia. And this is when I lived in Atlanta. And something switched in my head. And I don't know how long or when that happened, but that little voice went away. And it was like, take one moment at a time, do your research, and go ahead and talk. And it's fine. We're all just regular people.
Yeah, because something you have is this kind of air of confidence, at least to me. And I don't know if inside you're screaming. It sounds like when that switch went off, you kind of just got confident. But how how essential is that to being in radio and in television?
You know, you can have an air of confidence that, I can do this attitude, but having an egotistical air of confidence is not good. Yeah. So, I think, honestly, that ego can help you achieve greatness, but then it can also hurt you, right? So it's kind of like, who are you talking to? And check your ego at the door. We're all in this together. So an air of confidence, I think, comes from experience and feeling comfortable. I mean, I still, if I'm interviewing somebody and I could, not make any sense at all. But I try to do my prep work and write down questions or sort of know the direction I want to go in. And I love working with a producer that writes great questions for me, because then I'm like, yes, we have to stick this to 5 minutes.
So let's get into like Living Healthy Chicago. Like you said, airs Sundays on WGN. How did you get into that? And take me through the early days. What was it like at the beginning?
So I've been hosting Living Healthy Chicago for 11 years. That's a long time.
That's a long time.
Yeah. I had just moved back to Chicago from Atlanta, and my friend Lou Canellis was hosting the show along with Andrea Metcalf. But Lou and I were friends from a long time ago, and he was moving on to do something else. And he had said to the manager or the management, he said, why don't you call Janie? She can do a push-up. And so I already knew I knew the person that was in charge. I had worked for him before. So I knew I was back to town, and I said, yeah, let's do this. And so in the beginning, it was great, and it was fun, and we were figuring out what stories work and what does living healthy mean. And they had an established brand. The show had been on the air for a couple of years. So I needed to say, how can I put my spin on it? What can I do to improve what they're already doing? And it's really changed and evolved over the last 11, 12 years. But it's been such a fun project to be a part of. Nobody gets to be on a show for 11 years. Come on.
Yeah, no, it is quite a long time. I mean, it's long in terms of television, 11 years. What were some of the challenges at the beginning you faced that you kind of look back and you're like, wow, we really moved past that and evolved?
Just getting noticed, really putting together great content and it being a source of inspiration for not only our inner circle, so our team, then the station, and then also the audience. So we were really trying to showcase what we could do to all of these different arenas. So like you have the salespeople are like, hey, look, we can really do great sponsored content. And then you've got folks that want content, informational, educational content. So, going out to the doctors and the medical team, we're a really good show, but then also being entertaining. And so it was sort of just, going down that path and trying to get noticed and get people to watch and know the show.
Yeah, I think a part of that, like you said, a lot of your content's educating an audience. Do you ever feel like there's a pressure with that you're delivering the right source of information and that you're in the best interest for the audience?
All the time. When we do a medical story, it's the opinions of the experts. We have to make sure that we're working with the right experts. They know what they're talking about. They've got the right letters behind their names, or that they actually are educated in the content that they're providing to us. None of us are registered dietitian nutritionists. None of us are medical doctors. None of us are mental health experts, right? So we have to make sure we get the right experts on the show to give out the right information. We do always close the show by saying, remember, if you ever have any questions about your health, be sure to talk to your doctor first. And that is the most important number one thing we can give away from that show. We can tell you everything we want to tell you. We can educate you. We can inform you. We can entertain you. But at the end of the day, if there's something wrong, you need to seek out your medical team.
You have this, I think the word's ethos, right? This kind of air of experience around you. At least people can choose to watch you and maybe and hopefully trust you. What's the challenge of getting that? What's the challenge of connecting with your audience? How did you get there?
So it's so great. I always pray that however anybody wants to hear me, whether it's on small screen, on television, on the radio airwaves, or now on social media, because that's a whole new thing that's happened since I've been doing the show. I always pray that if they hear anything, they hear the word love, right? So meaning they're only hearing good. They are truly connecting and knowing that I am one of them. I'm just the lucky person that gets to be over here and actually talking to the interviewer or creating the content and giving it to my friends who are the viewers. So it's one of those things I've always been told, and whatever, pat myself on the back here, but I've always been told if it's an interview, somebody will say, you always make me feel so comfortable. I forgot the cameras were on, and this could be the most nervous person ever. So to me, that is a gift that I was given, and that is something I don't know how it works, and maybe that's part of your earlier question, and that's the gift to give.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it goes into that, like you said, there's like that idea of love, like it's a very universal feeling. It also seems like honesty also goes a little bit with that. Transparency, just being a nice person seems to translate well.
I mean, put a smile on your face and nobody will know you're scared. Kindness wins. Love is the foundation of life. I mean, so if I can go in and have a platform like I do on all of the shows that I host or even radio, and the platform that I have is to spread love, that's what I want to do.
You're listening to The Pursuit, the weekly podcast produced by the Junior Board of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, Chicago Midwest Chapter. I'm John Owens, the NATA Chicago Midwest Chapter President. And this May, we're celebrating our chapter's first live in-person event in more than 2 years. We'll present our 2022 Silver Circle Awards to 8 outstanding broadcasters from our chapter who've made significant contributions to broadcasting. Congratulations to those 8 honorees: Mary Margaret Bartley, Derek Blakely, Phil Ponce, Martha Teichner, and Roz Varon, along with our posthumous honorees Don Cornelius, Dick Johnson, and Morris Jones. The event, held at the Millennium Knickerbocker Hotel, will be rebroadcast on Sunday, May 29th at 7 p.m. on the U. Go to our website at chicagoemmyonline.org for more information about Silver Circle and for other news about NATA's Chicago Midwest. And now, back to The Pursuit.
The one thing I want to hear your advice on is branding. You were probably the first person I met who you as a persona had you were Jane Manzuris when I met you, but you have the Jane Klaus brand. And like, that's how you kind of, you have your mission statement essentially, and like what you give to the world. How did you develop that? How can younger people just starting out, develop their own?
Yeah, so because I started in public relations, having a brand and promoting a brand in the media was one of the things I loved about public relations. So I thought, well, I can promote anything. And as I started entering into this world of broadcast, I knew that I needed a brand. And I knew I needed to figure out what it is that I do that I could promote to others. I'm not a newscaster. I've never done news. And that was simply because back in the day, when my hair was 10 feet high and I'm wearing platform shoes and leopard pants, nobody would believe me if I was telling you a hard news story. But I was always in the lifestyle world. And so the brand to me was, if I'm going to have people turn to me for information, I need to give them a place to go. Let them know who I am and what I'm about. Also, because I have so many different jobs, I needed like a central, like a nucleus. Okay, so JaneManzuris.com, or Jane Manzuris is the brand, and she does A, B, C, D, all this stuff. So I recently did get married, so my brand is Jane Klaus, and I felt comfortable doing that. I know people are like, what? Your brand is already so established. And to me, it wasn't. I think, there's forgiveness in so far as people are like, what? Some big famous celebrity would change her name. Well, I can change my name. I'm not that big of a deal. So, but the branding to me, thank you for saying that I'm the only person or the first person you saw with a brand. But I think I learned it from my early on. You need to have a brand. If you want to promote yourself, grow in the business, people to be aware of who you are, start creating a brand. And I think in today's world with social media and websites and digital, it's way easier to do it.
Do you think you would have, if you were in my age group, do you think you would have thrived in that Instagram brought up in that world? I mean, you're still on Instagram, but actually growing with Instagram, do you think you would have loved that?
I think I would know it a lot better. I gotta be honest with you. I'm like the worst social media person ever. I try. I really do. And I feel like now I feel like my parents are like, what is this computer that you have here? What is this thing? So that's how I feel with social media. I need to be educated on social media. Yeah, maybe I would have thrived. It's a funny thing. Social media puts you out in the forefront and it, kind of showcases your private life. And I know you're going to laugh. I'm kind of private. So I don't want to show people that I'm like, what I'm eating or how I'm fixing my hair. Like I like to promote what I'm doing at work. So yes, I probably would have thrived at it because it would have been just part of my workflow, part of who I am. But now it's something we have to learn.
Anyone can take a marketing class or a public relations class, but what is kind of like the first step to establishing your brand?
So tell me who you are. I mean, for me, it's about finding a place to live, meaning like, give me a website, right? And then from your website, you've got all of these arms and legs that shoot off of it. And those arms and legs would be your social media channels, would be your blog, would be your TV show, would be your radio show, your podcast, would be your clothing line, or, if you're selling something, maybe you're selling a service, maybe you're selling speaking engagements. So here's one place, it's a menu of everything Anthony, and I can get all of this at this one spot. Now, tell me who you are once I get there. Now it's up to you to get people to go there. How do you do that? You do that through all of your social channels. You do that through all of your platforms. And then you do that through media. So if you're on the air and people can find you socially, send them to your website. It kind of depends too. Is your brand, what is your brand? If your brand doesn't have all of these different things, then, I was going to say you don't have to have it, but I would always still have a place where you live, so people can go there and learn more about you. Even if you're a videographer, show me your samples. I want to see everything you do. If you're a makeup artist, show me everything you do there.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And you have, in addition to the Living Healthy Chicago, you have Creative Living, and which maybe you can explain this to me. It seems like a double dipping hosting duty wise. How does that come about? How do you balance that?
Yeah, I triple dip. So I have Living Healthy Chicago, Arizona Living, and Creative Living. So Creative Living is a national show that airs in like 25 markets across the country. Arizona Living is specific to Arizona, and then Living Healthy Chicago airs in and around the Chicagoland area. So I freelance everywhere. I would love it if one company said, hey, you're going to just be the face of this show and you're going to do it every single day. And that's great too. But what's happened is I freelance and it's we only need you part-time. So for me, I'm a worker. So if I'm working part-time here, another opportunity comes along, I'm going to do that one too. And so together I make up my own full-time job. So that's why. And the other thing that I'm very, very aware of is that I won't do any health-related topics on any other show because I don't want to, like you said, double dip in the hosting duties.
Right. And for like Creative Living is always seems like that was your hobby that you turned into a full-time, or well, not a full-time, but a part-time gig. Is because you're a craftsman and that's kind of what you do in your pastime, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I love to make things. Yes, I'm a craftsman. I'm a maker. I think, again, back to that lifestyle, I was always making things. I made things in college. I made things after college. I was always making things. And I knew how to get on the air. So I would pitch media outlets and go on as a guest expert. And I'd have a table full of things that I made to inspire people to get creative, because a little ounce of creativity can help you live a healthier life and it can help you be well. So it all kind of bubbles into the same topic I'm always talking about. So the crafting, the making thing happened because I just wanted to do it. And I kept pushing and pushing and I said, this is going to happen. For years. And then finally somebody was like, oh, let's have a show. You should do a show. I'm like, yes, let's do it.
So was that one a little more from scratch or was it around before you were there?
No, that one, I had called the folks that actually hired me and I said, I need a camera. I need a videographer. I was doing a segment. I do a segment called Craft Room Crash. And I was doing a segment in Phoenix. I called somebody I used to work for in radio, his wife, And she said, I know who you could call for a camera, a video. And I did my segment. I paid the guy. This is all on my own, just creating my own series. Again, back to the branding. Who am I? What am I? What do I like to do? And I don't care. I'm not getting paid for it, but I love it. And I feel like there's arms and legs. Let's do this. So later, like 3 months later, they're like, hey, would you want to host a show? And I said, sure. And it was called Arizona Living. And then as I was hosting the show, somebody in Rhode Island that works for the same company said, my daughter loves when you do the making the DIY segments. My daughter loves to learn about other people who make things. Let's start a show called Creative Living. And I was like, absolutely, let's do it.
You got the pens and needles ready.
I was ready. I mean, it was super fun and exciting.
So how did you take me through the process of building that show and how how long you've been doing now? 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, 4 or 5 years. I've won 2 Emmys for that show. I mean, I'll tell you why, because I dedicated, and it was like peeling off a piece of my skin. You know, that is why, you know, you get the accolades, because it was true and it was meaningful. It was something I truly love to do. So I had a producer on the show. I have a producer on the show. And she and I work together like a well-oiled machine. She is a total pro, a true expert in producing. She has no desire to be on camera. I love to produce, but I like someone to take care of it and keep it organized. But I'll come with a million ideas, content ideas, script idea, like all these things that I can do. And together, we put the show on the air, and she was open to my ideas. I was accepting of her ideas, and that's why it worked.
What do you love from a producer? What qualities do you think all producers should possess?
Oh, Anthony, that is such a good question. Wow. I think about my producer at Creative Living. I do anything for her because she serves up the information to me. We work well together. So I think it's about a chemistry, building a relationship with your producer. They also have to have great writing skills. And also, I think if they can learn to write in your voice, because otherwise you're then taking their scripts and changing it so it feels good. If it's not written the way you would say it, it doesn't feel good coming out of your mouth. So I think a lot of it is luck. I think a lot of it is a little bit of time together and then planning. So yeah, a good producer is essential. I love a good producer.
When you first started out, back in the late 90s, I should say, and now you look back, did you think this was ever the route you were going to go down, or how did you envision your career to turn out?
I was a lost little soul. I had no idea. Came out of college, we were in a recession. Nobody was getting hired. They're like, you got to cut your hair short into a bob and wear a suit. I'm like, oh gosh, that's not me. So I took anything I could get. I worked at an advertising agency, and then I moved over and worked for Michael Jordan's restaurant in party planning. And I was really good at it. I still had the, desire to work in media. No, I never thought, I don't know what I thought my career would look like, but I'm pretty happy with it. I always want, so once I got into media, I never turned around. So many people said, no, you can't do this. No, you shouldn't. It's too hard. No. And I'm like, every time you tell me no, I'm just going to keep pushing.
That seems like the type of person you are, a little tenacious.
I mean, listen, I'm not the best at everything. I'm just not, but I love it. And I know that I'm pretty good at it, because I think you have to be a good producer while you're on the air. And I think that the more experience you have, you can hone your skills. But, the second somebody had said no, or you got fired, or the station, changed hands and they cleaned house, like, okay, great. What's next? I would get excited. And I'm going to find the next thing to happen.
Did you ever have a moment where you kind of maybe had some type of failure, or you came face to face with a challenge and you either overcame it or you had a learning moment?
Yeah, it's like, has that ever happened? Yeah, when is it not happening? So learning moments happen every day. if you don't learn from your last interview or your last on-camera experience or your last red carpet or your last show, then you really haven't done anything that day. So what would you have done better? And then you put that practice into place. So you learn every day. Challenging moments, I'm getting over one right now. Yes, I've been punched in the gut. Some of those are easier to get over. So you say, nothing's changed. Let's keep pushing forward. Some things hurt. And you have to spend some time grieving and figuring out what is my next step, or where am I going to go next, or how do I want to handle this? And at that point, you can decide, do you continue in the same path, or do you pivot and figure out another way to do what you love to do? So some sting, some are a little bit easier to get over. I think at the end of the day, everybody has their ups and downs. I'll give you an example of a very, very, very famous host on a national show that was airing in the 90s, maybe early 2000s. Show came back for a reboot 20 years later. They didn't cast him. He didn't get the hosting role. It's his show. He was a gut punch. He was in a bad place. Show didn't do so well. They called him and said, will you pop on the show? He said, no. And he said, I'll pop on the show if you give me 3 other shows, or if you let me have my own show or something else. Anyway, he went back, didn't have any hard feelings. That show went away because the host wasn't right. And now he has 3 hugely successful shows. Here's a guy that was going to quit the business. And he's established. He's older than I am. He's been around a long time. So you think about age as an issue. And he never gave up. And that's a great story. He never gave up.
How do you define success ultimately?
Is your heart happy? Are you happy? When you wake up in the morning, is there a little zest for life? Whatever that may be. So do you love what you do? Work, yes, work is hard, but do you love your work? So to me, success is setting a goal, accomplishing your goal, and being happy doing it.
When it comes to picking a career, it doesn't have to be one long 20-year job, right? Do you feel like it's okay to move around and that there's not a pressure to stay where you are?
When I measure success, I feel like a millionaire. Maybe don't have a dime in my wallet, but if you feel internally like I did this job, and maybe you did it for free, I don't care, or maybe you did make a lot of money, and you feel like you just won the lottery, you're so happy, and you maybe hated that job the week before and you want to quit, you don't like working with these people. So being happy in a younger age, just be happy in your life. But don't give up on a job because you're like, I don't like it. Give it a try. Really get in there and dig in deep. So you can't just quit. Everything is not happy. But if you do it and you succeed, you may find that you love it. You may find that you grow to love it. Let's say I want to be on the air, but I have to be a producer. Hey, I might be like, yay for me. I love producing. Or, I'm trying to, you can't just quit is my point.
Right.
Okay, so happiness, yes. Feeling a sense of accomplishment, yes, to me is success. It doesn't have to be 11 years hosting Living Healthy Chicago. It doesn't have to be a 20-year run. Meaning in that same particular job, back in the day when they didn't have computers and cell phones and work from home, Dad went to the office with the suit and tie on. They worked for 45 years and then they retired. And I think that's great. If that's what it is, amazing. People are like, I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm like, that's so awesome. So if it works for you, absolutely keep doing it. Absolutely. If you're worried about leaving and staying somewhere, I always say, give it the college try. Give me 4 years. And if you're ready to pivot or find something new or something comes your way, then do that. But if you're happy and content and you're learning and growing, then stay.
It all goes back to the kind of anecdote you use about the host. It's all about trying to bounce back and finding a different leverage, trying to spin it in a way that you can not benefit from it. Essentially, if you're given kind of a not so great situation, see what you can get out of it the most.
Yeah. So if you're in a situation that you may not like, I always think of like my 7th grade teacher telling my parents, Janie is not thriving. And if that voice comes into my head, then I'm like, okay, what is it that I'm not thriving at and where? And then it's have a conversation with my manager and say, here's where I'm at, here's what I'd like to do. Or it's have a conversation with my colleagues and say, how can we make this better? Or it's have a conversation with yourself and say, are you truly at the place that you need to be? Or is there maybe another arena that you need to step into? So it's a lot of hard looking at yourself, talk to your management, work with your coworkers, but it's a lot of searching, like a little inward searching, if there's a place that you're not happy with. But I say, if you're young and you're trying everything out, try it out. For me, I'm like, you don't have to know what you want to do until you're 28 years old. And I've told you this before, Anthony.
Yeah,
because you're dabble around in it for a couple of years. Do what you want to do. Try it all. And then by 28, I think I want you to know. And it could, swerve and bob and weave over the next course of your career, but like have an idea. Like I know that I want to be in the broadcast world, either on the air, producing, creating content. That's what I knew. I knew that by that age. But before that, just have some fun and play, because all that other experience could fall in and help you with your direction.
And I ask you these questions because you are a lifestyle guru, I will say. So I wanted to get your idea of philosophy on life and just being happy and working. Where do you like get your mantras, your ideas? How did that form over the years, and do you have a source for that? Where do you find that info?
It's interesting. Some of the things I learned from my parents, some of the things I have made up along the way, and would preach to. I used to have a staff, and I would say, here's what we're doing. And I would tell them, a certain, something to live by. And then sometimes, my husband will send me an email, or sometimes I'll see a quote or something that I love. And a lot of times it's just taking moments in your mind, just quiet it, settle down. Meditation. I'm going to tell you right now, you should meditate. I don't do it every day. You fall off, you get better. But sometimes you hear those words of wisdom when you're just still. So one of my favorite things is make an impact when you go out into the world every day. And that's take initiative, be motivated, have a positive attitude, communicate with others, and be timely. Timely in a sense of this is what's happening in the world today, and also show up on time. So I take that impact and use that as my statement to walk out into the world every single day. So I like to teach that a lot. Smile and no one will know you're afraid is something my mother always taught me. Kill them with kindness is another thing I learned as family, and everything will be okay is another way to look at things. But we said, how do you wake up every morning? Wake up and be excited for your day ahead. This day is only going to happen for you once. Wake up and make the most of it.
I like that. What would be your golden rule for hosting a television show or just hosting in general?
Listen. You got to listen. Don't make it about yourself. There's so many schools of thought from program management. I heard one time, nobody wants to know what you had for dinner last night. And then I've heard from another boss, like, yeah, you make sure you tell people what you did this weekend or talk about yourselves. So, feel out what you're doing. Make sure you're talking to the right audience, right? So you know who your audience is. But listen to your co-host, listen to your producer, listen to yourself, listen to the person you're interviewing, and also always stay positive. If you're in a panic situation, you're like, how do I get out of this? Just breathe, just remember to breathe, calm yourself, and know it's going to be okay.
What would be what's your tips or what's your golden rule for a good interview?
Yeah, do your research. Make eye contact with the person, listen to what they have to say, and also be able to produce yourself in your own head. So now you're splitting your brain. So as I'm interviewing you, Anthony, I know my next question. I'm listening to what you're saying in case I have a follow-up. And then over on this side of my brain, I'm thinking, okay, I've got about 3 more minutes. I need to find an out, and I want to make sure that I'm going to promote the next segment coming up, or whatever it may be, or make sure I ask him, X, Y, Z. But there's 3 things, and being able to produce yourself in your head is crucial, and listening, and then also finding a way to make eye contact and remember the questions that you're going to ask. Memorization skills. Everybody has a different way of doing it. You'll find yours.
It's funny how you pretty much just read my mind. 3 minutes to go thinking about the next question.
That's what I do.
The personality of personalities. Born with a gift of gab, a killer curiosity, and a hard work ethic, Jane just laid out the formula and groundwork for a successful career as a television host, and even as a social media personality or influencer. The same ideals and values she holds, I think, can be applied to the modern dominant mediums. There's a lot to learn from her that can be applied to content today. Honesty, transparency, and caring for the audience will bleed through the screen. But this is not going to be easy. It won't be easy. It will be hard, but you have to be prepared for the lows and even handling the high points of a career in media. So thank you to Jane for coming on, and thank you to all the lovely people who hit the play button. Make sure you hit subscribe and tell your friends about the podcast. Until next time, this has been The Pursuit, a Natus Junior Board podcast.